All right, today we are stepping into the ring for one of the biggest intellectual showdowns in history. It's Karl Marx versus Max Weber. We're talking about two absolute titans of sociology who both tried to make sense of the modern world. But man, did they come to radically different conclusions. So let's ring that bell and get this thing started.
So the whole reason we're doing this explainer is because of this question, which we actually pulled from a philosophy forum online. And it's a debate that's been raging for, over a century now. It really gets to the very heart of how we understand society itself. The big question is, did Weber actually land a knockout blow on Marx's core theory, or was he just fighting a totally different battle altogether? That's what we're here to figure out. Okay, so to figure this all out, we've set this up kind of like a series of rounds in a big fight. First up, Marx versus Weber. Then we'll dig into what they thought was the real engine of history. After that, the problem with capitalism, and they both had problems with it. Then we'll look at the anatomy of social power, and finally, their big predictions, revolution or an iron cage. And at the end, we'll talk about why this whole debate still matters so much today. All right, let's meet our contenders. You've got two brilliant German thinkers, both staring down the massive changes brought on by modern industrial capitalism. But here's the thing, even though they were looking at the exact same world, they saw it through completely different lenses. And this table right here, it just perfectly captures their fundamental disagreements. For Marx, it's all about the social class. Everything is driven by material conditions, the economy, who owns what. But then you have Weber. He starts with the individual. He championed what he called interpretive sociology, which basically means if you want to understand society, you have to first get inside people's heads and understand the meanings and ideas that motivate them. And that, right there, is the core of their whole conflict. Okay, round one. Let's dig in. The big question here is, what really drives history forward? I mean, is it all just about the money and who owns the stuff? Or is there something else entirely at play?
So Marx's answer to that is something called historical materialism. And to put it simply, his theory is that the way a society produces things, its economic base, that's what determines everything else. We're talking its laws, its government, its art, even its religion. For Marx, all those ideas, they're just a reflection of the economic reality underneath it all. But, and this is where Weber steps into the ring with a huge counterpunch. He basically asks, hold on a second, what if that relationship works the other way around? What if a powerful set of ideas could actually shape the economic conditions? What if ideas could create a whole system, something as massive as capitalism? And this right here, this is his most famous argument in a nutshell, the Protestant Ethic. Weber actually traced the spirit of modern capitalism all the way back to a religious idea. Now, to be clear, he wasn't saying that religion caused capitalism all by itself. His point was a lot more subtle. He argued that certain Protestant beliefs created this powerful cultural environment where capitalism could really take off. It all starts with the Calvinist idea of predestination, which created this deep, gnawing anxiety about who was going to be saved. So to calm that fear, believers started looking for signs that they were one of the chosen ones, and they found it in worldly success. Work wasn't just work anymore, it became a divine calling, or Beruf in German. But here's the real kicker. This new ethic said spending your profits on luxuries was a sin. So what do you do with all that money? You reinvest it. And that cycle, right there, born from religious anxiety, created the perfect cultural mindset for modern capitalism to absolutely flourish. So both of these guys agreed that capitalism had some serious problems. But as we're going to see here in round two, their diagnoses were worlds apart. They both looked at the system and saw something deeply irrational, but they pointed to completely different reasons for it. For Marx, the problem was really clear. It was alienation and exploitation. He saw capitalism as a system that just drowned everything human, relationships, virtue, love, honor, in what he called the icy waters of egoistic calculation. Basically, it's all about cold, hard cash. Workers are completely cut off from the things they create, and the whole system is built on the backs of the working class. For him, it's just fundamentally unjust and totally dehumanizing. Weber, on the other hand, saw a totally different kind of trap. He argued that the rational, calculating mindset that got its start with Protestantism, it eventually took on a life of its own. What started out as what he called a lightweight coat of religious values Well, fate turned that coat into a steel-hard casing, an iron cage that we're all stuck in.
So let's put these two diagnoses side by side. On one hand, you've got Marx. For him, the core problem is economic alienation. It's about exploitation. But then you have Weber, and for him, it's about being trapped in this iron cage of rationalization and bureaucracy. You see, the system of rules and efficiency that we built to serve us has now become our master. It's crushing our individuality and, in his words, disenchanting the world, stripping it of all magic and meaning.
Okay, so if those are the problems, then where does power actually come from in society? That brings us to round 3, where we're going to look at how Marx and Weber mapped out the whole structure of social hierarchy. Marx's model is super clear and direct. For him, power is all about one thing: economic class. Your entire position in society boils down to your relationship to the means of production. It's simple. You either own the factories and the capital, the bourgeoisie, or you sell your labor to those who do, the proletariat. That's it. Everything else in society flows from that basic economic fact. Weber, however, comes back and says, not so fast. He saw power as way more complex, more multidimensional. Yeah, he agreed economic class is definitely important, but he argued it's only one piece of a much bigger puzzle. For him, power also comes from your social status and from organized political action, which he called party. So let's break that down a little. For Weber, class is about your chances in the economic marketplace, your financial life chances. Status is totally different. It's about social honor and prestige. Think about it. A respected professor might have high status, but not a lot of money. Or a controversial celebrity might be rich, high class, but have very low social status. And then there's party. This is about power through organization. So political parties, unions, any group that gets together to influence the state. And for Weber, these three things, class, status, and party, are constantly mixing and interacting to shape where you stand in society. All right, it's time for the final round. Where is all of this headed? What did these two thinkers actually predict for the future? And I'll tell you right now, their outlooks could not have been more different. We're talking one picture of incredible hope and another of absolute despair. At his core, Marx was an optimist. He truly believed that capitalism held the seeds of its own destruction. He predicted that a working-class revolution would eventually overthrow the whole system, leading to a liberated, truly socialist society. Weber, on the other hand, was deeply, deeply pessimistic. He saw no escape. For him, there was no getting out of the iron cage of rationalization. The future he saw was a polar night, icy, somber, and rude. A world where bureaucracy and cold calculation just keep expanding until they completely crush the human spirit. So, after all of that, what's the verdict? Who won the showdown? Well, the truth is, it's not really about picking a winner. The real value is the debate itself, because what we're left with are two incredibly powerful and competing toolkits for understanding the world we live in right now. And his final scorecard really just crystallizes their core differences, right? Marx gives us this powerful lens for seeing history as a story of economic conflict and class struggle. And Weber gives us a totally different framework, one for understanding how our ideas, our culture, and this process of rationalization shape our lives and ultimately trap us in these massive systems that we ourselves created. At the end of the day, this whole showdown between Marx and Weber, it really boils down to one of the most fundamental questions we can ask about our own society. What shapes us more? Is it the material forces, the economic system we happen to be born into, or is it our ideas, our values, and our culture? And that really brings it all back to you, doesn't it? When you look at the world today, which of these two lenses feels more real, more resonant? Do you see a world defined primarily by Marx's critique of economic power and class conflict? Or does Weber's warning about an all-consuming, disenchanted iron cage of bureaucracy and rational machinery feel more accurate to you? The lens you choose really says a lot about how you see the modern world and your place in it.